In order to simplify radical expressions, in this case square roots of different numbers, we need to know what perfect squares are. Now, a perfect square is when you take a number, let's say we start with 1, and you square it. 1 squared equals 1. Then you go to 2. 2 squared equals 4. 3 squared equals 9. And basically you just go through and you square all of your numbers. 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 81, nope, so I've skipped 64, there's my eraser. 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81, 10 squared is 100. And basically, this list continues. We can continue this forever. So, I'll go ahead and get rid of this. These perfect square numbers are all numbers that we can take the square root of, and that's why it helps us out. So when we have to simplify a radical, like this first example, square root of 32, what we're trying to think of is, first of all, we don't know the square root of 32. It's not one of these numbers over here that we know the square root of. You know, if we were to type it into the calculator, we'd get 5 point something. No decimals on these. We just want a simplified answer with no decimals. So what we do is we break down the square root of 32. There's a property in math that allows you to square root. If you have a square root of a number, you can break it down into 2 square roots multiplied by each other. That makes no sense. But so what we're looking for are any numbers over here in our perfect square list. We have to pick one of these. And by the way, even though 1 is a perfect square, it doesn't really help us out, so we're going to ignore the 1. But do we have any numbers over here that fit into 32? And our goal is to find the biggest number that fits into 32. So in this case, 16 is the number that's going to help us out. 16 fits into 32 2 times. So we took the 32, we broke it down into a 16 times a 2. And then what we get to do is we actually can take the square root of that 16. That's why we picked it. The square root of 16 is 4, and that square root of 2 stays the same. So the square root of 32 is equal to 4 times the square root of 2. That is the simplified answer. So when doing homework on a quiz or a test, you definitely want to have these numbers in your head. Maybe write them down so you can always be looking at those and try to figure out what number fits into the square root that you're trying to simplify. Alright, so once we get the hang of these, we do run through them a little bit faster. This next example to the right, square root of 72, we want to know what number fits from our perfect square list fits into 72. Usually people, for a number like 72, they'll pick 9 because they know that 9 is on our list. We know the square root of 9 and it fits in 8 times. However, if you can find the biggest perfect square that fits into 72, then you don't have to reduce more than 1 time. And how do you know if you have the biggest number? Well, you look at this other number that we had left over. We had a square root of 9 times the square root of 8. If you can reduce a square root of 8, that means that 9 is not the biggest number. So do any of these numbers fit into 8? Well, 4 does. So because that square root of 8 can be reduced, we do not want to use that. We want to try to find a bigger number. So if we think about a number bigger that's going to fit into 72, keep looking at your list. 16 does not fit in, 25 does not, but 36 does. 36 actually fits in twice. So we take the square root of the 36, which is 6, and the square root of 2 stays the same, so we have 6 times the square root of 2. Alright, moving on to the square root of 40, we look at our list and figure out what fits into 40. Well, it can't be bigger than 40, so 49 and above is out. So 36, 25, 16, 9, 4. Really the only one that fits in is 4, and 4 times 10 is 40. Did we pick the biggest number? Take a look at the 10. Do any perfect squares fit into 10? They don't, so we know we picked the biggest one. We take the square root of the 4, which is 2, and then we're left with the square root of 10. And that one's done. Alright, square root of 63. What's the biggest perfect square that fits into 63? In this case, it's going to be a 9. 9 times 7. So you break it down into the square root of 9 times the square root of 7. Take the square root of 9 and you get 3, and that square root of 7 stays the same. Alright, last two examples have fractions. Anytime that you are simplifying a radical that has a fraction underneath, my advice to you is, if you can, try to simplify the fraction first. Does 100 divide by 2? And in this case it does. We end up with 50. And now all you have to do is worry about reducing the 50. Do any perfect square numbers fit into 50? And again, look at your perfect square list and we can see 25 is on there. 25 fits in twice. We take the square root of 25 and get 5. The square root of 2 stays the same. This last example over here, again, look inside if you can do any simplifying there. Just makes it a little bit easier. 10 over 90 does reduce. You divide both by 10 and you get 1 over 9. So now I have the square root of a fraction. So anytime that you are square rooting a fraction, you can break this apart. You can square root the top number and square root the bottom number. Square root of 1 is 1, square root of 9 is 3, so in the end we just end up with a 1/3. So reducing, simplifying radicals, again, we definitely need to know this list of perfect square numbers. If you don't have it memorized, you can recreate it pretty easily. Just go through and square every number. 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared, 6 squared, 7 squared, and you can write those down. Those are the numbers you're looking to see if they fit into anything that you're trying to simplify.